another thing that off the record we've been working on is a tool that kind of on a more kind
By
of
the
like,
way, you can't do off the record on a podcast.
all right, not off the record,
So it's on the
on
record.
Yeah.
on the record, yeah, obviously.
Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 12 of the Anchor Group podcast. Today, we're going to be focusing on payments. We're going to be speaking with a company called Paystand. And if you are somebody who is running a business and you are paying an absurd amount of credit card fees, then the conversation today is going to be for you. So stay tuned. Let's learn about how Paystand can help you out. Today, we have a couple of people joining us, Max and Todd, along with the co-host Caleb here. We're going to be talking to you about some payment options when it comes to payments in the NetSuite ecosystem, along with some e-commerce stuff. So Max and Todd, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here. Excited for
Happy
it.
to be here.
So before we really dive into things, here at Anchor Group, we have a couple of different office locations. Caleb is based out of Wisconsin. I'm based out of Minnesota. And Max, I know you're based out of Minnesota, right?
Yes. Yep.
Now-
I'm up in the Twin Cities.
Now, this time of year, gentlemen, is a good time of year to be a sports fan. All right. Right now, we got the Timberwolves going on a little run in the NBA playoffs. Max, have you been keeping up with that?
I was actually in San Francisco, unfortunately for game one.
Oh, were you?
But yes, I've been keeping up very closely, and the trash talk amongst headquarters out in Santa Cruz when we got Warriors Wolves in the playoffs has been next level. But I've been excited to see the Wolves catch some fire here. So hopefully we can keep it going.
For those of you who are listening to this, if you don't know anything about Minnesota sports culture, it's a pretty sad history. Not gonna lie. So the
Yeah.
Timberwolves, the fact that they are doing well, it gives us all something to get a little, puff up our chest a little bit, get a little bit excited about. So that's all good. So we're going to be talking today, like I said, about some payments. So Max and Todd both work for a company called Paystand. That's really where we're going to start out. Anchor Group we've worked with you guys in the past on a couple things, and I know Caleb is going to get a chance to shed some light on that, kind of some solutions we've worked through, because payments can get complex. So Max, can you talk to us about Paystand? What is Paystand and how does it fit into the overall ecosystem of payments?
Yeah, great question. So the way that I typically like to describe it is kind of first breaking down between B2C and B2B. So Paystand is certainly more focused on the B2B sector within the overall payments ecosystem. And then kind of break it down further, if you will, and where we fit into the B2B ecosystem. The most straightforward example would be just a payment link on an invoice, allowing a B2B customer to easily make a payment digitally. And then kind of going a layer deeper, I think within B2B payments, you also have a mix of, your paper checks, you have some credit cards mixed in there, you have direct ACH transfers as well. So Paystand, again, within that B2B payment ecosystem, our mantra, if you will, is getting customers away from credit cards so that B2B merchants can save money on those processing fees. So as you know, anytime you swipe a credit card, there is a 3% fee that has to be paid by someone. So the leverage that Paystand gives B2B merchants is just taking more control over what payment methods they're accepting, and what hard processing costs that they are absorbing. So again, we are definitely in the B2B space in the ecosystem, and we are all about digital payments and allowing customers, or our customers, the merchants, to get customers away from credit cards.
Great. So it really is that B2B play specifically because of those, credit card fees, essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you think about a B2C transaction, or if you're shopping online or even shopping in person, it's pretty commonplace for B2C, if you don't know your customer very well, that you're going to take a credit card, compared to B2B, when we have terms and we have much more complex, long-lasting business relationships between businesses. Again, it's more often you're going to know that they're good for it. You're going to give them 30 days to pay what they owe you. And Paystand's point of view is that you shouldn't have to lose 3% on a credit card transaction fee when you've already given the customer 30 days of float. So
Yeah. And for B2B companies that are selling, that are having orders that are thousands and thousands of dollars, that 3% really is becomes much more meaningful instead of, those B2C merchants for sure.
I have some, I'm sure you come up with some accounts too where you've done some ROI calculations and how much transaction fees they're paying. But I've definitely had clients that are paying $500,000 a year in transaction fees, sometimes $1 million or more, depending on the size of the client. So those transaction fees can certainly add up. And that's why I really liked myself bringing in Paystand as an option for clients, especially on the B2B side, is just understanding that there's real hidden costs that occur in transaction fees that people aren't measuring. But once they go back and measure it, they'll realize how much opportunity of savings there are. And I think it's a pretty interesting space to hit that B2B space in order to create extra savings there.
For sure.
Kind of going into, I want to understand a little bit more about the ecosystem, the types of environments that you go into. I know we work in the NetSuite, SuiteCommerce, and BigCommerce space. Out of those three categories, which ones do you work with?
Yeah, so out of those three categories, of NetSuite, SuiteCommerce, and BigCommerce, the first two we would have direct integrations for. So if you think of a payment link on a invoice that you'd be emailing through NetSuite, or if you think in SuiteCommerce of an order placement workflow, or even a My Account application, Paystand would be able to natively give you payment links or allow customers to save payment methods there. In the BigCommerce ecosystem, we do not have a direct integration just yet, and I don't want to dive too far down that rabbit hole. But to answer your question,
Table it for that one, I suppose.
Exactly. But yeah, okay. So the NetSuite and SuiteCommerce are the places we're able to natively embed today.
And what are the types of flows within SuiteCommerce or NetSuite? Can you give us some examples of what those flows and how that information goes through? Is it just a payment link?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one workflow that I think is a good example, especially for more retail-based merchants, would be that idea of when you have a smaller retail customer, maybe a mom and pop shop or specialty store, for example, you often want them to have some type of skin in the game. So whether it's a deposit up front, and then, invoicing for the remaining 50% after the fact. I think that's a pretty common one where we can allow a customer to save a payment method on file when they're placing that order. And then that can be charged on the merchants according to the merchant's preferences. But typically the most common use case that we see, Caleb, would be saving that payment method, charging 50% of the order total amount due upon placement. And then once that order actually ships and that sales order might be converted to an invoice in NetSuite, then after the fact, we can automatically charge that saved payment method for the remaining balance, the 50% due. So
what about revenue recognition? Because if you charge a card or process, there's a bit of a delay that can occur, and it can make it seem that you have a much more in your bank account than you actually do if you're creating the customer deposit, but it hasn't been deposited in the bank yet. What about is there any type of handling around that to make sure it's reconciled or I guess in this case that it's flagged as deposited at the right time?
Correct. Yep. So the main workflow and support that Paystand can offer there, first off, along the lines of deposit reconciliation, would be the ability to essentially notify the merchant not only when a payment's made, but also when the funds have entered their account. So I think the first part that you touched on, Caleb, again, the difference between a promise of funds to be delivered, if you will, and then good funds actually being in the merchant's bank account. Am I going down the right path there, Caleb?
I think so. Let me restate what I think I heard is that for an example of a customer deposit, it's creating the customer deposit, more of a request, that promise, and it's probably set as undeposited. And then the moment it hits the bank account, you're saying, all right, go look at that customer deposit one more time and toggle it to deposited.
Yep, precisely. So same would go with a payment record to an invoice. It's the notion of when that batch deposit is actually dropped into the merchant's account. Paystand's going back and updating all of those payment records that were part of that batch deposit from not deposited to deposited to reflect again that those are now good funds in the account.
Okay, so that upon creation of a payment record, or upon creation of a payment record, it can trigger that promise and then flip it to deposited for reconciliation purposes.
Spot on.
Got it. What about, you mentioned email reminders on I believe you mentioned the customer deposit. What about on the invoice?
Yeah, so the same principle really apply. I think the Paystand's goal, especially in NetSuite, and as a Suite app, is really to have merchants operating within NetSuite as much as possible. We do not want separate dashboards. We do not want to be pulling merchants out in external places to NetSuite to maintain any of these controls or get the automation that they're paying for. So any of our email or automated email reminder workflows, those are all going to be native NetSuite workflows. And they're all just going to be changing statuses directly within NetSuite as well. So what comes standard in most of our statements of work is typically going to be something like, 5 days before invoice due date, on the due date, maybe 10, 15, 30 days after. Maybe the language gets a little bit more aggressive after each step that the customer refuses to pay. But no, at the end of the day, they're all going to be native NetSuite workflows. So when an invoice is paid and it's marked, status from open to paid in full, those reminders are also going to drop off as well.
So let's think about when I want to send the invoice. We talked about payment links before, but we didn't really go into detail on how it looks. In NetSuite, there is an invoice record, and from there, I can deliver that invoice to my customer in a couple ways. One of them is the PDF template that you can print, attach, and send. Another option is via an email template, which is basically all the information on the invoice, but within the body of an email rather than an attachment. And how does Paystand get that link in? And how does that work overall?
Yeah, another great question. So I'd say most of our merchant partners are going to prefer that payment link to be in the body of the email template, just because it's ease of use, ease of access, and number of clicks that it's going to take for your customer to pay. Paystand is able to put the payment links directly into either an email template. Otherwise, if you are baking your NetSuite PDF invoices directly in NetSuite, our payment links can also attach there and come along for the ride. So I've had a couple merchants that might prefer to email their PDF invoices outside of maybe through Outlook or through Gmail or a separate outside system. So in those cases, Paystand's able to again insert that payment link directly when the PDF is being baked in NetSuite, and then it's really up to the merchant where they want to send that PDF from. But to kind of recap the long-winded answer, Paystand is able to insert payment links into either the email templates in NetSuite, otherwise also the PDF templates as well.
Let's say a customer clicks that PDF template or that link. It opens up a window for Paystand to pay. They click a payment option. What types of options are available? What methods?
Yeah, I actually can show you here with a quick visual. The three main options that we are going to be powering are going to be bank login, credit card, and then ACH. So this is actually a Paystand customer, Melbourne Golf. So their application is more so for the wholesale B2B, thinking about golf courses and different pro shops. But the mantra, again, coming back to Paystand, of we love digital payments that are other than credit card, if you will. So our primary option here is going to be the bank login. This would be an experience of a customer, logging into their predetermined, pre-established bank account in order to make this payment against the $2,500 invoice in NetSuite. The reason that we put this first and why it's our pride and joy over here at Paystand is because there are 0 transaction fees for any payments that are executed on the bank network. Without diving too far in, we do still offer a legacy ACH experience as well, where the customer could enter their account number, routing number, and then be off to the races from there. And then finally, credit card. So we still do offer credit card as a payment option. As you can see, the experience here has a 3% convenience fee that is automatically added if the customer chooses credit card as a payment option. So now we'll see that the additional $75 is reflected, while still being transparent and saying, hey, you could save $75 by choosing one of these two alternatives. But if you really want the Sky Miles, again, we're not going to stop you from paying with credit card. We're just going to ask that you help to really shoulder the burden of the processing fee with our company.
And Max, I'm curious. I know we have some listeners out there, so they don't necessarily see this visual. Is this also configurable by customer record in NetSuite, or is this a kind of carte blanche or one size fits all kind of solution? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so the merchant does have full control over two things. Number one is going to be the payment methods that they present. So we have some B2B merchants that don't even want to offer credit card as a payment option. So they're just powering bank login and ACH payments as their two rails. The second thing that merchants have control over is going to be that idea of the convenience fee. So when you think of the carrot and the stick method, if you will, this is more of the stick. So we're going to add 3% if you choose credit card. The other side of the carrot, we can also actually offer a 1% discount, or we allow merchants to offer a 1% discount to their customers to pay with either the bank login or the ACH option. So in those scenarios, when a customer does choose one of the alternatives, from a merchant's perspective, I'm only losing 1% from the discount rather than 3.5% from that credit card processing fee.
And
it
can
is
the
configurable by
percentages
customer.
be changed?
Yes.
Let's say I want to do 2%, and I just want to share part of the burden.
Yep, absolutely. So it can be either a percentage or a fixed dollar amount. So we have some merchants that will just do like $10 or $20 added on for credit card. And then the flip side of that, I think from Todd's question as well, is this is configurable by customer record. So it's not a one size fits all approach. We have some merchants that might have legacy customers of 15, 20 years that they might be okay eating the credit card fees, but just for those customers, if you will. So yes, it can be a percentage, it can be a flat amount, it can be adding, it can be subtracting, and it is all controllable by customer record in NetSuite. So,
for instance, I could put an attribute that says for all my customers that have net 15 terms, it's fast enough, or net 5 terms, they're paying me fast enough. I will cover the convenience fee if they just get me paid. And that's kind of what that's a benefit. It'd be up the net 5, let's call it. But for net 60 customers, then I'm always going to put a 3%. You could create unique rules per customer.
Yep, absolutely.
Very interesting.
Now I know.
And then after they pay the payment method and create payment, what is it doing from there with NetSuite?
So within moments, or I guess to first give background, every payment link that Paystand provides is referencing an object in NetSuite. So on that invoice example, as soon as a payment's executed, we're going to go and write the payment record to that invoice record in NetSuite, and that will automatically trigger the status of that invoice record in NetSuite to be updated from open to paid in full. As we touched on a little bit before, that's kind of only the first step of the reconciliation convo. So we know that this invoice has been paid. We know the funds are on the way. Step 2 is the funds actually entering the merchant's bank account. So a lot of AR solutions will kind of drop the baton, if you will, after the invoice has been marked as paid in full. And that's where Paystand goes a step further of when those funds actually do enter the business's bank account. We're actually creating that native NetSuite deposit record that has the line item detail of, hey, we put a little over 100 grand into your account today. Now, what made up that 100 grand were all of these payments made to all of these invoices, etc. So the end result is a fully reconciled NetSuite deposit at the end of every business day.
And okay, so we just walked through end to end of an invoice, the PDF or email template in that link, that click to pay link, the different payment methods, then creating the payment record and kind of the end-to-end flow. And what that would look like in NetSuite. Let's just pivot real quick to SuiteCommerce or SuiteCommerce My Account. How does that behave a little differently there?
For sure. So I like to think of SuiteCommerce as a, another medium through which a merchant can request payments from their customers almost. So from Paystand's perspective, again, we're really just operating and referencing those NetSuite invoices that are already created and living in the ERP. So when I think of something like SuiteCommerce My Account, again, I kind of view it as a different medium through which you can provide payment links to your customers. So I know Anchor Group works with a lot of My Account customers, and I know that you all have done a lot of customizations to really accommodate the different invoice presentment that merchants want. And really the way that I put it is Paystand just latches on and gives the payment link on that specific invoice view within SuiteCommerce My Account to allow a customer to directly make a payment as they're reviewing their outstanding invoices, their invoice history, etc.
The main added benefit is just having to be all in that one portal, and also to be able to see all open invoices rather than it being isolated to just the single invoice that came in via email.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing almost is the idea of invoice history. That's why a lot of merchants I talk to will lean towards a SuiteCommerce My Account due to the visibility that it can give you of, you might have paid 1,000, 3,000 invoices with a merchant. You can go in and review your past payment history in My Account, which I think is a big added benefit again for a lot of NetSuite users that I work with and that I send Anchor Group's way.
So if you're trying to get more people to use ACH or bank and not credit card, then how are you going to make money?
Great question. So the short answer, I'll try to keep it short. But no, the end goal for Paystand is to make money on our subscription. So when you think about the different, I'd say revenue streams for given AR solutions or payments processors, there's really a few different ways that they can charge you. One would be subscription. Another would be obviously the transaction processing fees. And then, the one-time implementations are kind of obviously more of a one-off, but for Paystand, again, because we're offering a payment rail that has 0 transaction fees in that bank login, our business model is really not banking on making money on the per transaction fees. Our goal is to get more customers, like you said, to the ACH, to the bank login. So we will have a processing tier that will largely be dictated on the volume of revenue that will flow through Paystand. And that's really where we're aiming to make our money. So being able to provide a little bit more predictable cost to collect revenue while allowing customers to get away from the percentage, per transaction fees that I think have been kind of the norm when you think about historically the digital payments processing space.
So
Todd, yeah.
yeah, so Max, in turn, wouldn't that kind of relate to more predictable operating expense when it's not a variable cost and it kind of switches over to fixed costs?
Exactly. So, especially when you think about a merchant that historically has only, almost only exclusively accepted credit card, they've kind of baked in credit card rates have never gone down. I mean, if we're thinking about it, so they kind of almost plan incrementally that their cost to collect revenue will continue to increase as they grow as a company. So that's kind of another area that Paystand is trying to break through some of the noise, if you will, is by being able to get customers away from cards, a little bit more predictable OpEx, especially when we start to talk about the wholesale side of a business for like a retail merchant, for example. So
Interesting. Okay. Well, that was a really good explanation of the differences between Paystand and their revenue model compared to normal. Let's say that you're trying to get someone started on Paystand. What's the overall strategy that you're trying to guide their accounts to then?
I might pass this one over to Todd. I don't know if you want to touch any more on the specifics of what you've seen from talking with partners and other merchants, kind of more top of funnel. But I'm curious to see if you want to share your thoughts on that one, Todd.
Yeah, absolutely. So the strategy, well, a couple things I want to mention that are unique to Paystand is that every one of our clients has a one-to-one relationship with a customer success manager because it is a story of adoption. The incumbent expectation of essentially doing business is receiving money, either through credit cards or ACH, legacy ACH. So there's never been this notion or this idea that there's a fee-free payment rail that settles at the same time as credit card. So that's a story told over time. And the strategy, again, is to really, Paystand's mantra is called the journey to zero. We believe ultimately that the cost to collect your revenue really should be zero. So over the course of your relationship with Paystand, that is the strategy that, is kind of rolled out with the CSM that they have appointed to them. Hey, let's roll this out, amongst this subset of customers. Let's see how they're reacting to it. Maybe you have a particular product that you're looking to promote. It's really, it's ad hoc. It depends on the business. It depends on the market conditions. There's a lot of things that go into it. But ultimately, the strategy is to transition as many people as possible towards just more cost-effective payment methods.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're trying to help create a strategy to eventually get to almost no credit cards over time, but you still want to allow it because you need to be able to train your customers, and training behavior takes time. And in some customers, you're not going to train them at all. They just want to do it the way they've always done. And it makes sense. You still have to accommodate for those customers.
Now, I know there have been times where here at Anchor Group, we have worked with you guys here at Paystand. And so for those of you who are involved, Caleb, talk us through a real life example of when there's a customer on NetSuite or a client of ours on NetSuite that then becomes a mutual client. Like, when has this worked very well for a real example of a business?
Well, I'll start with us because we use Paystand. So I'll start with us for a second, and then I'll move into some other options and things that we've saw for other people. We use it because we're also in that B2B space, and it's a very easy process. It's easy to install. Implementation is straightforward. That reconciliation, the payment link and the payment portal for the payment link is really clean and a fast experience. So it feels easy to use, and that's really useful. Now, we have a number of customers on SuiteCommerce My Account, and in addition to our NetSuite services clients. And the My Account, which exists as part of SuiteCommerce 2, is where people might pay invoices. Now, natively on SuiteCommerce or SuiteCommerce My Account, it shows invoices to the customer logged on, not necessarily the sub-customer. Or even, let's say, there's an enabled feature in NetSuite called multi-subsidiary customer. And if you have that enabled, you have to set on the customer record one primary subsidiary it's assigned to. So when they log in, they're only going to see their invoices for that primary subsidiary, not cross-subsidiary. And that's one area where we've paired alongside of Paystand, where the customer wants more invoices to show because you may have want to show sub-customer invoices. Let's say you have a business with lots of locations where you have the main entity, the HQ, and then you've got 200 locations that are technically sub-customers that get invoices as well. So we have extensions for the My Account to be able to display that invoice display, and then Paystand picks up with the rest of the process from there. Another example was that cross-subsidiary customer, where you have one customer record, multi-subsidiaries associated to them, and multiple invoices to each subsidiary. So we'll create an extension to surface all of those subsidiary invoices in a single checkout experience, where it's just one flow. It groups the invoices separately, and then it triggers the payment from there so that it can create separate payment records against those invoices, but with a single checkout experience. So a lot of the times that we're interacting with Paystand with some of our clients would be making sure that our clients have that full list of invoice data prior to Paystand picking it up where we left off in that process. And there's a lot of companies that use My Account, and there's so many different customer record structures and ERP setups that influence how they want to set up the My Account and payment experience on the portal. So those are the main areas.
Todd and Max, outside of that, when is the ideal situation for a merchant to reach out to you based on their needs? Like, what needs do you see in merchants where your solution is the best solution for them?
I think Caleb kind of scratched the surface of one of the very unique use cases that we've been seeing more and more of a single NetSuite One World instance that has multiple subsidiaries. And there might be a customer that has open invoices with many subsidiaries across this One World instance. So as Caleb kind of hit on, from a merchant's perspective, you want to make it as easy as possible for your customers to pay you as quickly as possible. So you don't want to send them to a different link for a different sub, as an example. I think the other use case that I think we've been a really, really center bullseye fit for is when you start to talk about recurring, any really aspect of recurring B2B invoicing, whether that's a SaaS platform, whether that is, a maintenance on your machines if you're a manufacturing company. I think the best fit for Paystand there is, there's essentially an expectation that autopay means saving a credit card on file, and that has to span across B2C all the way over to B2B. And that's where Paystand's been able to come in a situation where we have a credit card saved on file. We're doing, a couple $1 million a month in these subscriptions. Paystand's able to send a very similar experience to what we had on the screen earlier, where you can say, hey, dear customer, we're switching to a new payment platform. You're going to have 3 different options to save for your recurring subscription now. By the way, we're going to ask that you shoulder the burden, XYZ for the credit card fees. So I think any type of recurring subscription, and the idea of saving your bank login or saving your ACH info, and now Paystand can just automatically charge that whenever there's a new NetSuite invoice that's created. So I think that's another use case that we uniquely solve for merchants in the B2B space.
Very real life use cases, that's for sure. You guys, as we start to wrap things up, quick question for you. On the Paystand side of things, of course, tariffs have been a big conversation piece in the news over the past couple of months. And I'm just curious, how have you seen that impact your business or impact the merchants that are currently on Paystand? What is that like?
So in terms of how we've seen tariffs impact our daily conversations with merchants, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. Number one, being in this environment as a B2B buyer, I think there's a sense of hesitancy that I've heard in the marketplace of, you hear 1% one day, another percentage another day, and there's a lot of different, extensions on pauses. So I think to answer more succinctly, a lot of merchants that I'm speaking with are kind of pausing major investments, pausing major decisions for now until there's a little bit more clarity around what the long-term direction is. And I think there's a specific that Todd was hitting on when he's talking about our new smart control feature. So when you looked at the idea of adding an additional 3% to offset credit card processing costs, think of the same idea except for being able to add certain percentages on all payments to offset tariff costs. Obviously, we know that some of the tariffs being up to 100%, it's not going to be realistic for a merchant to just increase their prices by 100%, especially based on how their competitors are handling that scenario. So the cool thing about smart controls, and I think, again, as we enter this period of uncertainty, I think Paystand can help give a sense of certainty and security to these merchants, because Paystand can allow them to, again, as Caleb hit on before, you can create different plans for different customer records. You can create different plans for different time periods. As we see the different levels of tariffs increasing and decreasing, you can also reflect that when you're requesting payment from your customers based on the percentage of the burden that you're asking the customer to take on as well. Because, again, with some of the tariffs being up to 100%, it's not always going to be an option for merchants to just increase the prices of their goods by 100%. So
right, exactly.
Todd, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really the idea is really just to restore those gross margins to pre-tariff levels, as Max was hitting on. You want to be cognizant of what your competitors are doing, and you don't want to grossly overestimate or underestimate. So we just want our merchant partners that we're working with who are heavily afflicted by tariffs to again, have the smartest controls in those scenarios.
Tariffs, I actually have been having different types of conversations with clients than maybe than you have. Is one area that they're looking at is, they can either try and adjust their revenue and increase their sales to offset the reduced margins, or they can look at more of their costs. And I think that Paystand has a really good positioning option for people who are paying a lot in transaction fees today, because that's just a quick way to reduce your overall costs and gain back those margins, in addition to just being able to charge them and offset them from, I think you were mentioning, just offset them in a different way with the payments. I think just the fact going from a traditional transaction model to more B2B focused to handle your transactions, and it is another way, and probably a faster way to be able to regain those margins. And as such, clients and prospects and our customers are just looking for ideas as they look at their balance sheet, like what are the areas that we can reduce on costs in our operations. And that does take investment, but they know that there are easy wins in operations to reduce costs right away. And that takes a little bit of consulting and development and considering swapping out different products. But oftentimes there's very quick ROI as they really critique their operations flow in their business processes.
Absolutely.
Now, I would say the one number that Todd and I always like to reference is for every 1 million accepting credit card, that's roughly 30K. If you're paying 3%, that's 30K that you're going to lose in processing fees. So if you accept $10 million in credit card, that's $300,000 that the business is losing just to credit card processing. So as you kind of hit on as well, Caleb, as merchants start to say, well, how can we start to recoup some of these margins? Credit card processing fees can be some more of the lower hanging fruit, certainly in some cases by customer base. So
that's really great. And thank you both for just sharing your thoughts and helping to educate us further on what Paystand does, how the value proposition in the space, and even how people can take advantage of it to help offset some of the tariff costs for them. It was really educational to get that broken down, and just walking through the processes in a more technical way, not just the overall fluff, but like, what does that actually look like inside of NetSuite? What is it actually doing for that accountant? And it was really useful to hear that directly from you. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I was just quickly going to time as well. Another thing that off the record we've been working on is a tool that kind of on a more kind
By the way, you can't do off the record on a podcast.
All right, not off the record.
So it's on the record.
Yeah.
On the record, yeah, obviously. So I was just going to go
Completely
into
on the record.
the tool that basically completely, absolutely on the record. The tool that basically would allow for merchants to look at what their average sales price, buy cost, and units sold would need to be. And it basically, it's a toggle that shows where you need to be to maintain what your pre-tariff margins were. So that's something that's completely on the record that we're also working on in the background.
Glad to hear it. Well, Todd and Max, thank you very much for joining us today on the Anchor Group podcast. If somebody's been listening to this and they want to learn more information about you, what you do, what Paystand does, where can they go find that information?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty average, or I'm pretty not average. I'm pretty active on their different A word. Todd, Todd Kibisu, and then feel free to shoot me an email as well. So Kibisu@paystand.com. We'll have all of our contact information down below.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.